Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful day in the DMV. Um, at least we're all inside. Um, it is our third meeting of the Climate, Energy, and Environmental Policy Committee for 2025. We're going to call it to order at 10:03 a.m. Before we get started on the main agenda, the first thing we need to do is to adopt the meeting summary from CEEPC's March meeting. Motions and seconds can be made verbally or in the chat box. And bear in mind, I can't always see all of you, so feel free to unmute and speak up. And if staff can help me monitor the chat box as well. Is there a motion to approve CEEPC's March meeting summary?
So moved. Randy Freed.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a second? I'll make a second.
Alan Hughes, second.
Okay. Thank you. I couldn't see who that was, but as long as staff has it.
Alan Hughes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or changes to the meeting summary? I'm scanning. This is a nice big meeting. I don't see or hear any. So with that, all those in favor of approving the March meeting summary, please indicate with a verbal aye, a hand raised. Yay, I see some emojis and some real hands. Okay, any noes? And if the noes could speak up, any abstentions? All right, I'm not hearing or seeing any noes, and if staff can note any noes or abstentions they saw, but we are going to approve those minutes. Moving on to the next item in our agenda, Mr. Robert Christopher is here to provide an update on the legislative sessions in Virginia and Maryland now that we've closed out both of those. He'll also give an update on recent federal actions. Mr. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Give me one moment. Alyssa, will you share the slides? Okay, great. Thank you. So as Chair Bagley said, I'm here to provide an update of the end of the legislative session in Virginia and Maryland and talk a little bit about some local federal actions. So next slide, please. I'm going to provide just a brief overview of the legislative committee as I have in the previous updates to the committee, and then I'll get into the bills that we wrote letters for and what happened with them. So the CEEPC Legislative Committee is a small group of CEEPC members who meet with staff to review legislative initiatives across the region. We track bills during the sessions to determine whether or not we want to write letters in support or opposition to bills that are before the legislatures in Virginia and Maryland. And this committee primarily runs through the legislative session from January till April. And the Maryland session just wrapped up last month. Next slide, please. This work is guided by the COG Board legislative priorities, which are adopted in January every year, and particularly the environment, water quality, climate resiliency, and air quality legislative priorities drive the work of the Legislative Committee for CEEPC. Next slide, please. Those priorities this year are to support policies to meet the region's climate goals, support multi-sector actions to reduce greenhouse gases, ensure sustainable, secure energy access for all, support aggressive state renewable portfolio standards, expand clean energy innovation, technology, and finance, support aggressive energy efficiency goals, as well as enhance incentives and financing mechanisms for resilient infrastructure, and to support policies that preserve and protect regional air quality and public health. Next slide, please. So these are just the dates of the legislative sessions this year. As I said, it usually runs from January to April. The Virginia session was usually shorter, and it ended in February. And the Maryland session ended on the 7th of April. Next slide, please. So here are the first letters that we wrote to for legislation in Virginia, HB 1616, which would have established an offshore wind industry workforce program, and then HB 1819, which proposed changes to the commercial property assessed clean energy bill, which would have changed the definition of a property owner to include lessees so that they might be eligible for CEEPC loans in Virginia. Next slide, please. So the status of the bills, we also wrote letters for HB 1883, Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards, and SB 1040, which was the companion bill to House Bill 1883. And that would have removed requirements for a solar-powered or wind-powered generation facility to have a capacity no less than 50 kilowatts to qualify for third-party power purchase agreements. So the status of those bills, HB 1616, the bill was vetoed by the governor, and the House did not have enough votes to overrule it, so the House sustained the veto. House Bill 1819, this bill was approved by the governor after passing the House and the Senate. And then House Bill 1883 and Senate Bill 1040, the companion renewable energy portfolio standards, were both vetoed by the governor. Next slide, please. A brief summary of the Virginia session. So the governor signed 53 bills in this session, including key energy-related legislation, and vetoed 38 others. One notable bill, House Bill 1491, defined fusion energy as a clean energy source, including that in Virginia's all of the above, like energy pursuits for the state. Other bills that were vetoed, House Bill 106, 108, and Senate Bill 120, would have expanded small-scale solar and energy storage. This legislation was supported by groups across the region. Those bills, as well as a bill related to solar procurement, were vetoed. And finally, House Bill 1601 and Senate Bill 1449, which would have required developers to conduct impact assessments for data centers over 100 megawatts, were also vetoed. Next slide, please. Moving on to Maryland. Here are some of the letters that we wrote for Maryland. House Bill 232, municipal recycling plans requirement. This was designed to increase the reuse and recycling of beverage containers, reduce litter pollution and associated costs. House Bill 407, requiring the largest municipal corporations to adopt or update their recycling plans every 5 years. Next slide, one more letter, please. And also Senate Bill 149, responding to emergency needs from extreme weather, or the RENEW Act, which would establish the Climate Change Adaptation and Mitigation Payment Program in the Department of the Environment. Next slide, please. So the status of those bills, House Bill 232 did not make it out of committee and to the governor, and neither did House Bill 407. And as of when this was written, Senate Bill 149 did make it out of both the House and the Senate and was sent to the governor, but had not received his signature yet. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of the Maryland session. So Governor Moore signed 2 major energy packages, which were encompassed by House Bill 1035 and Senate Bill 937, which would expand in-state power generation and battery storage, and also limit the use of ratepayer funds, for example, banning spending on utility, lobbying, and trade association dues. And also signed the Renewable Energy Certainty Act, which was House Bill 1036 and its companion Senate Bill 931, which established clear siting and decommissioning standards for commercial solar and battery projects, and also preempts restrictive local zoning for 1 to 2 megawatt solar installations. The governor did veto the Energy Resources Adequacy and Planning Act, House Bill 1037, Senate Bill 909, which would have created a strategic planning office on energy reliability. The governor vetoed it, citing overlap with existing agencies. Next slide, please. So here's the federal update. The Senate recently voted to reverse California's Clean Air Waiver Act, which allowed the state to enforce stricter vehicle emission standards for the light-duty emission or the low emissions vehicle program. This undermines California's longstanding authority to lead on vehicle emissions, potentially weakens national climate targets, and delay EV adoption. and may result in ongoing legal challenges from expected environmental groups and the states that also follow California's Clean Air Act waiver. Also up for debate in the Senate right now, which passed the House, is a repeal of the investment tax credit for solar and other renewable energy projects. This could slow down renewable energy deployment, increases uncertainty for clean energy investors and developers, and it also makes it more difficult for organizations like ours and local governments to meet their climate targets. So that's the state of the federal tax credit and the California low emissions vehicle waiver, the two largest federal actions since our last update. Next slide, please. And that's all I have. If there are any questions or comments.
Do any members have any questions or comments about the legislative update? Maya, can you see if there's anyone else or?
Yeah, I see Shannon Moore from Frederick County noted in the chat that the Maryland governor vetoed a data center study bill.
Mm.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Shannon.
The slides have come down. I was going to ask if we could go back a slide before we move on, just to ask the membership if there's any interest in our committee commenting via letter or other mechanism on encouraging the Senate to protect the investment tax credit. It's the last item mentioned there. It has not yet been repealed. So there's potentially an opportunity to speak out on that or speak in support of that. I don't know if Robert wants to, provide any other insight into what a letter might say or how we might advocate, to maintain that tax credit.
Right, I got it. I can't find my hand button. Can I
can see you,
comment?
Cindy. Go ahead. Yeah.
This is Cindy in Tacoma Park. I think that would be a very good idea. I also wonder, given that Maryland follows the California thing is done. Never mind. I was gonna say, given that Maryland follows the California rules, that would be potentially useful also. But the tax credit seems like one. The other thing that I realize this is a legislative briefing, but I also wonder about some of the proposed executive actions, if we are gonna get a summary of them at some point in this meeting or not. But first things first, should I move that we draft a letter in support of the ITC tax credit repeal? I mean,
And in support
in
of
support of
repealing.
not repealing it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, I'm with you. I think, I don't know that the legislative committee has a planned meeting, so I'd appreciate it if this body could, if there's a second on that or any other discussion in support of that, we could ask staff to draft that letter and it could be circulated to the legislative committee to review before signature. Procedurally, is that from the COG staff? Can y'all confirm that would be an acceptable procedure here?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so Cindy's made a motion. Is there a second for us to draft a letter in support of the investment tax credit?
Alan Hugh, I second that.
I hear a second. Okay, all those in favor of CEEPC sending a letter in support of the investment tax credit from on behalf of our committee, indicate with hands or ayes. I see a few hands. And then, thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Any objections? Or no's, I should say. Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So, Mr. Christopher, if you wouldn't mind taking a crack at that draft and circulating it to the members of the legislative committee, we'll do our best to review it and give you some, prompt feedback.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the update and for tracking those items.
You're welcome.
We got some work to do next year.
For sure.
in the legislatures. All right, moving on then to our next agenda item. I'd like to welcome Sarah Kogel-Smucker, who will brief us on the progress being made in Montgomery County on meeting the goals in their local climate action plan. Sarah, the floor is yours. Oh, make sure to unmute.
Uh-oh,
Can we hear Sarah?
no.
I can see her and I see her slides.
I can hear you, Sarah.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Can anyone else? Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. And I was going to share my slides, but it looks like someone shared that. So thank you. I'll just say next slide, please, then. So for those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Kogel-Smucker. I'm the county's climate change officer, and that's a position in the county executive's office working for County Executive Mark Elrich on coordinating our whole of government approach to implementing our climate action plan and climate change goals. And so this presentation is on our fiscal year 24 update, but I wanted to give a little bit of context on what the goals are, what the plan is that we are giving an update on implementing. And then because fiscal year 24 is already done, some of the highlights go into 25, but we will focus on that report. And then, of course, happy to answer any questions. And I do want to also acknowledge my fellow CEEPC committee members. Lindsay Shaw at our Department of Environmental Protection is here, and Director John Monger, Director of DEP, is not here, but is a CEEPC member. Next slide, please. Great. So I'll give you a brief overview, as I said, of the goal, plan, and status. Next slide, please. So in 2017, the county adopted some of the most ambitious climate change goals in the country. It's an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2027 and 100% by 2035, which is quite soon. But we have made progress. Next slide, please. So we rely, like most of you, on the MWCOG GHG inventories for communities. So our most recent numbers are 2020, and we are anxiously awaiting the 2023 update, which I believe is forthcoming this summer. But we have made a 31% reduction since 2005, despite a 13% increase in population. Of course, some of the 2020 numbers we might not see continue for good reasons because we're not all stuck in our homes, but that progress nonetheless, and quite a ways to go. Next slide, please. In 2021, this is the 2020 inventory. This should look pretty familiar. I think most of us with our suburban, urban areas with a rural mix, the vast majority of our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation and buildings. And so, while the plan addresses all sources of community-wide emissions, the real focus of this work is transportation and buildings. Next slide, please. So in 2021, the county adopted our climate action plan. And this was a really extensive process with departments and community involvement, starting pre-COVID, but a lot taking place virtually. I've been in the position close to 2 years, so all this predates me. So amazingly, I came in with a really robust plan in place already. Next slide, please. And the plan sets out 7 different areas and has a vision of where we want to land in those areas. But in each of these 7 areas, it incorporates racial equity and social justice. So racial equity and social justice is a focus of the plan and is the focus of each area, and is a specific focus also of our reporting. And it's an action-based plan. So it lays out 86 actions that the county as a whole will take. And there's a link in the slide for those who want to see it to both the plan and the updates. But to note, it's a whole of government approach. So I'm in the executive, but the plan has actions with responsibility from park and planning, WSSC, CEEPC. The school system is a huge contributor, and the 86 actions lay out lead department and contributing departments. And we actually, in this past year, went through, refreshed, and updated so that the responsibilities remain clear. For, if it really made sense to move it from one department to another, we did that to keep it a living document. Next slide, please. So the fiscal year 2024 annual report we released, and what it does is does a survey of where we are on the actions. So qualitatively, the judgment of the subject matter experts who are working on these actions and the departments involved, we started 78 of the 86 actions in the climate action plan and made significant progress on or completed 55 actions. And so we're very proud of that, in that, this is a plan that is rapidly being implemented. It doesn't mean we don't have a ways to go, but it is rapidly being implemented. And then I think another, snapshot of where we are is what we're spending. And so the county's budget since release of the action plan in 2021 has added 171.7 million in investment in climate actions and programs. So that's across government, except the MCPS spending is not broken out, nor WSSC, but within the executive that, and so that's also a link to the budget. I'll circle back on this, but we have a separate climate chapter of the budget that pulls out all the investments. So this is everything from fleet, transportation, DEP's climate programs, but they're in their own section, and then they're pulled out and put together and looked at holistically in the budget. Next slide, please. So to turn to highlights, and I'm not going to read everything on the slide, but I want to pull out a few highlights and then describe either a strategy that I think has been helpful here, and or a challenge. So one thing I really want to highlight in our clean energy implementation is this first bullet, low-income electrification. DEP, under Lindsay Shaw's leadership, launched a 1.5 million grant program for pre-weatherization, electrification, and climate adaptation in low and moderate income homes. And what this does is grant community partners the funds to do this work that we all know is needed for racial equity and social justice reasons, needs to come first in our electrification journeys, but can be tricky, and can be costly on the inroads. And so this is a key strategy that I think, we're piloting and wanting to do more and more of, is working directly with community partners. So there's 4 community organizations that won the first round of the grant, including, for example, Vietnamese, I'm blanking on it, Vietnamese service. I'm blanking on the exact, but it's a Vietnamese-based community organization that provides a lot of local services and now is providing this as well. Another highlight I want to mention is our green bank. We have a county green bank, and they've been a really important partner in catalyzing funds, but also in being sort of a first stop, other than the government, for technical support. We're able to fund technical support for building performance implementation, for example. So we're able to catalyze funds and make it a little less confusing where to go to get help and how to be connected to other resources. So that has worked well. Next slide, please. In terms of buildings, the two things I want to highlight is our building energy performance standards. A lot of you I know have been following this, but for those who haven't, this is performance standards over time to increase the energy efficiency of existing commercial and large residential, so multifamily buildings. The legislation was passed by the County Council in 2022. And after a pretty extensive process, we were able to have regulations approved by the County Council in February 2025. So this is one of our absolute key strategies. Over the long run, these regulations will reduce greenhouse gas impact of buildings of 15% of the entire pie. So not just 15% of buildings, but this one strategy is just a huge impact, and not easy to get over the finish line. And so the strategy I want to highlight here is just stakeholder involvement, the level of stakeholder advice, discussions, input, hearings, council meetings, webinars, you name it, that DEP has done to get us here is really extensive, as the involvement of our county council's Transportation Environment Committee that ran a series of stakeholder sessions on draft regulations past the hearing period. Another thing I want to highlight is our building codes. So our Department of Permitting Services hosts the building codes and runs that process. And we adopted the 2021 Energy Code and Green Code, the specific ones there in the slide. But we're on a very deliberate process that would get us to net zero in new construction over time. And so a lot of the current code update focus is either electrification readiness in new construction and changes that will be moving us towards that net zero direction, so that new construction is currently and even more over time bringing us towards our goals. Next slide, please. So in transportation, two things I want to highlight. One is the fleet electrification process, and this is run in a partnership with our Department of Transportation and Department of General Services. And so in terms of our bus fleet, where we are is we have 25 electric buses operating with a contract to buy 89 more. These buses are currently charging in our solar-powered battery backup microgrid bus charging station, Brookville in Silver Spring. And then we've broken ground on MTOC, which is going to be our second bus depot and have the capacity between the two to charge the entire bus fleet. But because current battery capacity in our more rural areas, in the ag reserve and the more extensive areas, won't work with electric buses at this time, and we're not, slowing down implementation, waiting on solutions. MTOC is going to be the first green hydrogen producing bus depot on the East Coast, and we got a $1.5 million grant to do that. We also got, that's a federal grant, we got state support. There's been a lot of local support. Again, all of this happens with extensive partnerships, but we'll be doing green hydrogen on site. So this is hydrogen produced solely by solar power. And that will fuel the hydrogen powered buses. And all of this is laid out in great detail in the zero emission bus transition plan that was released in 2024. And that plan worked with consultants and really charts out the configurations, the route changes, the timing needed to get the fleet fully transitioned by 2035. And so that's another key strategy I wanted to highlight, is sort of doing while planning. So, Brookville was up and operating by the time the zero emission bus transition plan is underway. So I think, starting the action, making it going, happening, and then having the plan that charts you out how to get the rest of the way there has been a helpful strategy. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is the BRT plan, and that's that map on the slide. And so, you know, we need to mode shift folks out of cars. We don't rely as much as DC by any means. You know, we are more suburban rural area, but 15% of single passenger vehicles is calculated in the climate action plan by 2035 to be switched to public transit. That's a big switch. And so the BRT program, which there's a great video on the website if you're interested, you can click that link. I highly recommend looking. It shows how BRT is different. It has prioritized lanes, signal timing. You pay before boarding or on or off. There's enhanced features on the bus like Wi-Fi so that you can get work done. And the idea is to build out this whole network so that the buses are moving faster than the cars. And as you sit and watch buses whir by you in traffic, you might be a little bit more motivated to get on the bus. Next slide, please. So carbon sequestration, or as I like to say, plants, because I think it's a better phrase. Yeah, what I want to really highlight is the tree planting, and it's not written on this slide, but what I really want to highlight about the tree planting is the focus on equity emphasis areas. So over the last 10 years, Tree Montgomery has planted more than 18,000 shade trees across the county, and that's just one of our tree planting programs. We have Tree Montgomery out of DEP. There's Reforest Montgomery out of Parks, and DOT does street tree planting. And then we have, you know, private partners that are also planting trees. But the county did a heat map exercise with citizen scientists. And then we are working to build a micronet system where we'll have much more localized heat. And then tree planting has been prioritized in high heat areas, in under-resourced areas, in historically underserved areas, in a lot of schools that are in historically underserved areas. So it's tree planting for the carbon sequestration, but also for the equity and resilience of it. Next slide, please. So speaking of resilience, before doing that, one challenge I wanted to mention on the tree planting is, as I'm sure everyone here experiences, you know, even with a whole of government approach, there's a lot of siloing. And so we don't have a total count of all the trees planted in the county. And I think it's just an example of the challenge of data and information. It's an action-based plan, which is fantastic, but that means that we are not necessarily counting towards a number of trees or knowing where we are collectively on a number of trees. And so one of our goals in the upcoming year is to get a tree counter up on the website as just an initial pilot of starting to pull information much closer together and have a clearer picture of collectively across the county the progress we're making. So in terms of climate resilience, one thing I want to highlight is resilience hubs. And so part of the plan, as you know, DC pioneered, is having community-based locations that people already are activated, they know they use, they're involved in, but that are also microgrid, solar powered, battery backup, can go in island mode. For now, have some gas generators, but over time, we hope to move towards a fully battery backup, and that these hubs can go on when the power goes off. And so so the county has been building them out at both county facilities, and then the plan is to do it in community-based facilities as well. There's been significant capital investment in that. So the fiscal year 24 update, for example, which is on the slide, is design and construction in 3 key locations, including that MTOC bus depot that I mentioned, we broke ground, the 6th District Police Station. We actually have the opening on Monday. and it is the first net zero police station. I believe, I don't remember if the region or the country will look at the press release, but it's exciting, and it is a microgrid, so it will be able to operate. And one of the first microgrids that was built was the Animal Services Center. And then some folks might remember a plane hit a power line by, and the whole power went out in the area, but the Animal Services Center just had the microgrid operating, maintained power. The cats, dogs, and other animals were cared for without interruption. And so that's the vision we want to bring to make sure to serve every community in key county facilities. Next slide, please. So in terms of climate governance, I want to highlight how we've institutionalized considerations of climate and equity. And some of this is within the climate action plan. Some of this is within the county's broader racial equity and social justice goals. But we've established advisory committees. So we have an official advisory committee. CEEPC is the climate one, the racial justice one, of appointed community members with expertise that meets regularly, that formally advises the county. We've incorporated both racial equity and climate change considerations into the county's budgeting process. And I would really flag that as something that's worked well. You know, sometimes process can be a process to get right, but this one has really worked very effectively, where internally in the executive budgeting process, departments literally check a box if the new needs request or the proposed cut is climate related. Those get pulled out by OMB, and I look at them with a committee of subject matter experts holistically, and then present to the county executive recommendations on prioritization or flag key concerns with cuts. It doesn't mean the county executive needs to listen, but it is a formalized way to make sure we're looking at climate investments as a whole, and that we're looking at programs from a department that, you know, may be a medium departmental priority, but are a very high climate action plan implementation priority, that we're able to flag that. All county council proposed legislation is accompanied by both racial equity and social justice impact statements. And then I am involved in a lot of the executive decision-making, the regular standing meetings, as is the chief equity officer, so that, you know, there's a quite literal seat at the table, and that helps you raise concerns and make sure these considerations are part of the decision-making process. Next slide, please. So out of time, so I'll just address this very briefly, which is public engagement, partnerships, and education. Since the action plan, the county has significantly increased public engagement. We have some of the numbers there of participants in nature centers and DEP waste recycling. We launched Be Climate Smart, which is a one-stop shop of easy, low-hanging fruit, everyday actions that residents can take. And connect them to county resources to do that. But I would flag this also as a challenge. It is, you know, something that needs to be done by every department. And there's still a ways to go in sort of unifying and amplifying, and especially in the media environment that we have, where there is not as much local media and local attention as there used to be, making sure that that message is actually getting out and resonating, and making sure it's getting out and resonating to you know, all the diverse county communities across the county. So we've made some significant progress on all of that, including adding Spanish language outreach staff. But, you know, the scale to which we need to reach folks to affect their behavior change, we're still working on, and you know, is definitely something to keep looking at. Next slide, please. So this is part of the Be Climate Smart. I just wanted to show an example of it. These have gone up around the county on buses and libraries, and are resources that departments can use in their own climate communication. And we're hoping to use them, for example, with Department of Recreation and some of our summer camp programming. Next slide, please. And that is it. If there is time, happy to answer any questions, or also, of course, always happy to answer questions or discuss offline.
Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I'm just scanning the chat real quick to see if there's any questions in there, but does anyone want to unmute and ask Ms. Kogel-Smucker any questions?
I've got a question.
Sure, go for it.
Hi. Well, first, thanks. Great presentation. A tip of the hat in terms of very aggressive goals, extremely thorough plan, and terrific progress on implementation. My question relates to the 800-pound gorilla, which in Prince William County is actually more like an 18 million ton gorilla that I didn't hear about, which is data centers. I know that Montgomery County has lots of data centers around Rockville, maybe elsewhere. In our county, the addition of data centers is going to quadruple our greenhouse gas emissions unless we can get the data centers to agree to use zero carbon electricity. So I have two questions. First, have you estimated the effect of data centers on your ability, well, on what your greenhouse gas forecast will be for 2028 and 2030? And second, have you come up with a good way to get the data centers to commit to using zero carbon electricity? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think, you know, we've discussed this in other committees, how concerning this is. We actually don't have any, you know, large scale data centers in the county yet. There's one proposed at the Dickerson site. It's a pretty good site for it. It's a site of a former power plant. So there is been, you know, back and forth between various entities that are involved in the citing an approval process on clean energy amounts, but there's been no decisions made yet. There's no, they're sort of in their approval process still. And so for us, more data centers right now are being located statewide than in the county. And we have an energy tax in the county. So until, this is just my personal opinion, not official county policy, but you know, while we have the energy tax, we're likely to see more data centers in other counties than ours. But that doesn't matter from a climate perspective, right? It matters maybe on our GHG numbers, but it's where it affects our GHG numbers is going to be on the, you know, state energy mix, the ability of the state to transition to clean energy. So we were strongly supportive of the bill that was vetoed to study data centers. You know, it's certainly a tricky issue. No one has quite figured it out, but a lot more is needed. And, you know, we've been engaging on a statewide level at the PSC and the legislature to support what makes sense to us in terms of paths forward here. But also, one of the key pieces of the plan is CCE. We intend to become the default energy provider in the county, and we have state authorization to do it. We're in the middle of the PSC process. We're at a point where we need to put together a business plan. We also need county council approval, kind of ASAP. So once we become the default energy provider, we will have an ability to more accelerate towards clean energy. But of course, the pressure on the grid of the mix makes that harder. So it's all interrelated and absolutely important. But for us, it's more a statewide issue than a local issue for now.
Thanks.
I see staff has some hands up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention, because of Randy's question, that in our greenhouse gas inventory work for the 2023 inventories that Sarah mentioned are coming, we'll be bringing the draft inventories to you all at your next meeting in July. And we're including some estimates of data center electricity consumption for those jurisdictions that have significant data centers in their communities. So more next meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's a topic we're going to probably need consistent updates about, moving forward. I had a question for Sarah, but I'm gonna drop it and maybe ask her if she can put the answer in the chat or connect with me separately. I'll ask it here, and then I'm gonna move us along just to keep us on time. I love buses. I love what you're doing with BRT. I was curious if you're concerned at all about the production pipeline of buying 89 electric buses. I know on our side in Alexandria that there's only, I think, 2 producers of the electric buses, and they're all very personalized to these local jurisdiction needs. So I'm just curious how you guys, if you have anything to share about how you're planning that pipeline, or if you're having any concerns or issues about actually the delivery of such a big investment. Yeah, thank you. I'd be curious to know what you can share on that in just a separate note. If anybody else has other questions, I love the presentation. It's great to hear such a positive update, and congrats to Montgomery County for all the work you're doing and what's possible. It's inspiring. Thank you for that. I'm going to keep us moving though. So if anyone else has questions or comments for Sarah, please drop them in the chat, and she can probably drop her email in there as well if you want to send her an email. So next on our agenda is TPB staff member Mike Farrell, who will brief us on another favorite issue of mine, bicycle and pedestrian planning activities in the region. This is an important area of work to help reduce vehicle traffic and reduce emissions. As Sarah mentioned, they're trying to shift, I think, 15% of drivers to other modes. So Mr. Farrell, please share with us the update.
Right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Harrington, and I'm going to actually do an intro for Mike, and then he'll jump in and get into the details. So I'm a recent addition to the staff here at COG. I'm the Multimodal Planning Program Director. So I'm new to staff at COG, although I've been a transportation planner in the region for many, many years, and including stints at Montgomery County Planning and at Metro. So this morning's presentation will provide an update on some current activities related to bike ped planning, but we wanted to start by providing background on how sustainability and environmental protection and strategies such as encouraging bicycle and pedestrian use have really been fully included in the TPB policy framework and emphasized in multiple planning over many years, certainly over the last 25 years. So let's see, next slide. And we're just going to provide a little background on the policy, and really starting with the vision statement that the Transportation Planning Board adopted in 1998. This helped set the stage for a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So in that vision, TPB talked about and established, working with COG, the notion of regional activity centers and having mixed uses and compact walkable environments. The vision statement also emphasized multimodal connections and reducing reliance on single occupant vehicles. So all strategies aimed at reducing vehicle miles traveled. The policy framework went beyond just the vision. So TPB adopted principles, which include environmental sustainability as a principle. In our long-range plans, most recently Visualize 2045, and we're now doing Visualize 2050. We established goals, and so the environmental protection is one of the key goals, which also includes mode shift away from SOV, reducing VMT, and then also implementing technologies and strategies to reduce emissions. So let's see, why don't we move on? With that policy framework, on the next slide, we could take a look at the fact that we've had many successes. So as a region, particularly when we talk about making the region more walkable, making it more friendly for bicyclists and pedestrians. A lot of great successes. So, and part of that includes that a lot of the growth in the region has been focused on the urban core and on activity centers that have been built that are more walkable. And so one example is DC gaining 130,000 people in this time period. So really adding people to the part of the region that is more walkable. We've seen the effects on the bicycle mode share quadrupling. We've had, and certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, a huge change in micromobility with Capital Bike Share and shared e-scooters. examples all over the region of more infill development being more walkable. And so we've cited a few examples here, both within the district, but then also all over in Alexandria and Arlington, even sort of Silver Line corridor in Fairfax. And many of our jurisdictions have implemented complete streets policies, which are important policy framework. And then, you know, in really all of the jurisdictions, and we're going to hear more about this today, there are many bicycle and pedestrian plans and trails plans that really bring together a coherent vision for using non-motorized modes to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So Mike's going to get into some of the more details on what we're working on currently, but we just wanted to start with that really to set the stage that this is obviously a critical policy priority for the region. So Mike, I will turn it over to you to talk more about current activities.
All right. Thanks, Tom. So yes, I think that, you know, for some of the progress that Tom was just talking about, you know, I think at the TPB, we can't literally claim credit for all of it. There's a huge amount happening at the jurisdictions, but I think that, you know, we have supported it and we've done things to really to help it move forward. So looking at our major activities, we have a standing bicycle and pedestrians subcommittee of the TPB Technical Committee, which has been around for quite a long time. And its major role is coordination and information exchange. I mean, if you look at a lot of our bicycle pedestrian planning programs at the local level, they started out as like half a person or just one person. So I think there was a lot of need that was felt to, you know, figure out what your peers were doing and, you know, try to exchange information on how to, you know, on how to best, you know, solve some of these problems, get these facilities built, and so forth. The subcommittee also advises on the bicycle pedestrian aspects of other TPB plans and programs, including transportation, safety, freight, commuter connections, access for all, the Citizens Advisory Committee. I mean, all of these groups have, you know, questions and things related to bike and ped that they deal with. We do also monitor non-motorized accommodations within the Transportation Improvement Program and the project info trackers. So when we put in, when transportation projects are entered into the regional database, into the TIP, which they're required to be in order to get federal funding, we ask people whether or not they include bicycle and pedestrian accommodation, and also whether or not I believe they're compliant with complete streets. And so, so we can see that there has been, and I would say large majority of projects for which the bike and ped could plausibly be included. It is being included in transportation projects. We do things like do some planning for emerging modes. Like very often when something is new in the region, it lands at the regional subcommittee first before maybe eventually getting to more of the coordination work gets devolved to state and local. So for example, dockless bike sharing and electric scooters, when those, you know, those e-scooters showed up, we developed a working group on that originally met twice a year. Now we meet once per year to coordinate regionally now that the various jurisdictions have permit programs in place. And Capital Bike Share, when it first came along, it was first discussed at the regional level before being moved over primarily to DDOT, which is, you know, largely running the program. We also have our regional Street Smart pedestrian bicycle safety campaign that has its own advisory group. but there is some input on that from the Bicycle Pedestrian Subcommittee. We do conduct 2 regional bicycle and pedestrian planning or design trainings or workshops per year. One of them is, the micromobility workshop. And besides the subcommittee, we've also got Commuter Connections, does great work on the Regional Bike to Work Day, which they partner with the Washington Area Bicyclists Association. Commuter Connections, which is primarily responsible for carpooling, because they have contacts at all, at so many employers. It's really great for them. They're very well equipped to get pit stops organized and help grow the event. And that event has been, has had more and more participation year after year. It's really gotten, grown from a single location downtown DC to a truly regional event. So next slide, please. All right, so looking forward for fiscal year 2026, we do have 2 major products or plans relating to bicycle and pedestrian. We have a regional bicycle and pedestrian plan, which was last published in May of 2022. And we have a regional National Capital Trail Network, which I'll discuss which was most recently updated in February 2024, and which I will discuss in more detail in subsequent slides. So next slide, please. All right, so that's the cover of our plan. Kind of I think it's a pretty good cover. It sort of shows what we're all about. Bikeable communities, bikeable, walkable community activity centers, connected by trails and other facilities. So next slide, please. So we've had a bicycle and pedestrian plan for some time. And I think there was a sense that bicycling and walking supported enough different goals that we really wanted to have a standalone element of our regional transportation plan, which is how that's what the bicycle and pedestrian plan started out as being, but before it became a freestanding document. It does give us a lot of specialized information about bicycling and walking, much more than it is contained in the long range transportation plan, Visualize 2045. So things like bicycling and walking trends, mode share, safety, complete streets, best and recommended practices, and evolving design and facilities. It also describes and analyzes a planned regional bicycle and pedestrian network, which is compiled from the various agency and jurisdictionally approved plans. It is primarily a planned facility network. However, because it includes the National Capital Trail Network, it does include some existing facilities. And this is designed to give a picture to planners and to the general public of what we have planned, we collectively, meaning all the TPB member jurisdictions, in terms of bicycling and walking facilities for the region. So next slide, please. So this is the bicycle and pedestrian network for Visualize 2045. And this is sort of designed as like a PDF document, but moving on to the next slide. You can see that we have a web page in the TPB resources and applications where the plan, a lot of the highlights of the plan or the data from the plan essentially live. This is an interactive map. You can zoom in, you can click on projects. It gives you some of the summary data, like the mileage of various facility types that are being planned. And you can see from those pie charts, what those facility types and mileages are. There's also analysis of what kinds of things the network will serve in terms of priority areas and so forth. So next slide, please. So the total number of planned facility mileage of planned facilities is 2,645 miles. These are planned only, not existing. There's about 1,962 miles of planned low stress facilities. And by low stress facilities, we mean things that are plausibly usable by people of all ages and abilities. So, shared use paths away from traffic, protected bike lanes, i.e. protected by a physical barrier that prevents cars from entering the bike lane. And then bike boulevards, which are streets that are sufficiently traffic calmed, sufficiently low traffic, and also equipped with sidewalks, such that we can plausibly say that these facilities are usable by people of all ages and abilities, that families with children, for example, would be comfortable using these traffic calmed streets. Then we also identified about 683 miles of other higher stress bicycle facilities, including some things that are really more like spot improvements, like pedestrian intersection improvements, streetscaping projects, and so forth. So, all right, next slide, please. So the prospect for this, we have a 4-year update cycle for the bicycle and pedestrian plan. Our goal is to complete it by May through June of 2026. We will incorporate both the National Capital Trail Network and a 2050 low stress network, which the low stress network really kind of identifies the network that is a network of planned facilities that could conceivably or would be eligible to be included in the National Capital Trail Network. And, we'll get input from these or approval from the various committees listed. So next slide, please. All right, so our other major product is the National Capital Trail Network, which, as you can kind of see from the images, is primarily off-street shared use paths, but which does include some things like protected bike lanes. Next slide, please. So a little background of the National Capital Trail Network. This is different from the bicycle pedestrian plan because it is intended to be a prioritized network, i.e. it's something that the TPB said that, well, out of all the various existing and planned facilities, we would like to identify a long distance regional network that will enable people to get around the region, and that we will prioritize completing using some of the funds such as TLC and transportation alternatives that we have available to us, and some of the technical assistance programs. And so we were directed to do this back in 2018. July 2020, we adopted the National Capital Trail Network. And then 2024, a updated network map showing our progress since the initially adopted network was adopted. So next slide, please. So, I've covered this a little bit already, but this kind of gives you a picture, literally a picture of the kind of facilities that we're hoping to include. Like the Mount Vernon Trail, which is part of it. So a long distance continuous network of low stress, mostly off-road bicycle and pedestrian facilities, accessible for people of all ages and abilities. Will provide healthy, low stress access to open space, reliable transportation, and it will serve nearly all the TPB priority areas, including activity centers, transit, high capacity transit stations. And this is one of the TPB's 7 transportation initiatives or unfunded initiatives from the visualized plan. So next slide, please. And this is our map. The green is existing, and the planned is purple. And then next slide, please. And we also have a web page for the National Capital Trail Network. And this will enable you to zoom into your jurisdiction, down to a local neighborhood. And you can click on the individual projects and get, basic information about them. And it also includes, some of the analytics of what the, what the network will serve. So next slide, please. So this is the progress for towards completion between the initial adoption in 2020 and really like end of 2022. So we're looking at, so far we are building about 27 miles per year, and we're shifting. There were some new facilities added, at the request of the jurisdictions. Some facilities were removed that proved to be infeasible. But the primary goal here is not to grow the mileage of planned facilities, but to actually build the facilities that we have planned. And so we are shifting more towards completion from 45% existing to 55% planned to closer to 50-50 existing and planned. However, at the current rate, it would take about 30 years to complete the National Capital Trail Network. So next slide, please. And these are some of the TPB's priority areas, that is to say the equity emphasis areas, the activity centers, the high capacity transit areas, and the transit access focus areas, which are all areas that have been analyzed and prioritized for enhanced bicycle and pedestrian accommodation. And the National Capital Trail Network will serve nearly all of these priority areas. Not quite, but nearly all. So next slide, please. In terms of population and employment, because those things are more spread out than our priority areas, the proportions served by the National Capital Trail Network, within the half-mile buffer, which is how we determine that, is somewhat lower. It's a majority of the jobs and housing, but or jobs and population, but not by no means all. So next slide, please. So our goal is to update this by January, February of 2026. That will keep us on a 2-year update cycle. We will incorporate the approved updated National Capital Trail Network into the updated bicycle and pedestrian plan. We are looking towards an update process that will involve the jurisdictional staff updating the map directly rather than conveying to us through oral or written descriptions or hand-drawn maps or other means, what changes they want, since I think that they're better equipped to give us, whether it's in the form of shape files or whether it's a form of new shape files drawn with the pit mapping tool. I think that that's something that's going to be, I think, far more efficient and effective than the update process than we used last now, because this is information that the jurisdictions have and that we don't. So I think they're more capable of giving us precise information. So next slide, please. And that's all I've got.
Thank you for the presentation and the progress. There's a couple of great comments in the chat, and just in the interest of time, I'm just going to highlight them real quick and direct everybody to them. One was asking about whether there are gauges placed along some of these new miles to track usage. I'm wondering if there's a quick comment you can make on that about how y'all are gauging usage.
Yes, there is a regional trail counts program that is run by the National Park Service. A lot of it, but of those automated counters, eco counters, a lot of them are on National Park Service property, but not all of them are. There's quite a few in the district in Arlington. So, I mean, that is one data point. There are other data points like Strava, which is, primarily an athletic app, but the Strava data has a reasonable approximation of like bike commuting routes, because people tend to use the long distance when they're riding a longer way. They tend to use the same routes as that some of the recreational users are doing. There's also the Capital Bike Share origin destination. They provide very good data, but our usage data is not as good and is not likely to be as good anytime soon as what we do for automobiles.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that Strava is something I can tell you. I use Strava to track my ride to the Nats Park on that very wharf route. I rode in the Mount Vernon Trail along the wharf and used the bike valet. So I kind of love that, knowing that that went into some data set somewhere, that ride was tracked. So yeah, that's interesting. And if there's any way localities can better participate in tracking usage through their portions, please let us know. The other comment in there that I just wanted to lift up was that Manassas and Manassas Park are doing a feasibility study for a ped bike trail running parallel to VRE. So people can get from Manassas to DC off the highways. And I also just wanted to flag a question I had, which again, maybe we can follow up, is a lot of the emphasis in the presentation and the plan is sort of on bike ped routes. And what I'm curious about is the extent the plan addresses sort of multimodal, like using your bike to get to VRE, walking to Metro. How are we facilitating that? I know in the VRE side, there's a lot of conversation about how to expand or draw more people in who the walk is a little too far, and maybe we don't want to build a ton of parking. And so how do we facilitate people maybe riding their bike, because you could put your bike on VRE now. They've seen like 100% increase in bikes on the train. So I don't know if y'all have a moment to speak to just the multimodal emphasis within the plan.
Sure. I mean, we do track within the extent to which the National Capital Trail Network will serve the high capacity transit and transit access focus areas, which are both different studied areas that are right around high capacity transit that would and that is a proxy for, to some degree, the degree to which people will be able to use this network to ride their bikes to transit. Beyond that, we have we have a program called Transit Within Reach within our technical assistance that but TLC and to some extent transportation alternatives also do this, but they look at to what degree they fund retrofitting of improvements to walk and bike facilities that will help improve access to transit. But we're also looking, I think, within the transit access focus areas. We identified areas that had a potentially high ability to improve the ability of people to walk or bike to the station. I mean, so areas that have an obstacle of some kind, like a freeway or rail line or something like that, that simply doesn't, the neighborhood on the other side simply does not have access. And even though they're within walking distance of the station, they still can't get there. So we do have a program that hones in on that. And beyond that, just trying to generally improve walk and bike access. Even if it's not specifically directed, a lot of it ends up being, pretty close to transit, and it pays attention to transit access in some of these retrofit programs. And then I would also say the Complete Streets program or Complete Streets policies, those are very much in effect pretty much across the region now. So whenever you build new facilities, instead of like the old days when you built a wall around a Wamata rail station to make sure that nobody could walk to the station, you could only get there through motor vehicle. Now they pay attention to, under Complete Streets, they pay attention to having walk and bike access into metro rail stations. And that's true of nearly all our facilities that get built. They include bike and ped accommodation.
Is there anyone else with a quick question for the presenters on this topic? Am I missing anybody, staff? Okay, well, really appreciate the time and the presentation, gentlemen, and excited for hopefully we can increase that completion rate. 30 years feels like a long time. So, but thank you for the presentation so much. If anyone has questions, if y'all can drop your contact details in the chat so people can follow up. And thank you for joining us. With that, we're going to move on to the next item in our agenda, which is actually COG staff member Maya Davis, who will brief us on the work being done by staff to assess where we stand in meeting our regional 2030 climate and energy goals. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And great presentations. I think that you will see in the results that I'm about to share, some collective results like Montgomery County's presentation, Mike's presentation, or some really great best practices that are happening across the region that I think you'll see reflected in these results today. So we did a local government questionnaire on climate action and progress. We surveyed all 24 local jurisdictions or requested survey responses from all 24. These results today are the preliminary results that reflect 20 jurisdictions' responses. And I did get a response in the other day and just wasn't able to incorporate it for today, but we can certainly incorporate any other responses that we get before the final version. Next slide, please. I do want to mention that I'm gonna go through some highlights of the survey, but we do have all the questions that we asked local jurisdictions posted to the meeting materials online on the website, and that this presentation does include a summary of all the responses to all the questions. So it is here for you all to take a look at beyond this meeting and beyond this presentation. But in general, for the mid-course review, what we're trying to do is track progress towards our 2030 goals and the regional 2030 climate plan that you all here on CEEPC adopted back in 2020. And the survey is also informing the development of our broader metropolitan statistical area climate action plan. So we brought the approach to the mid-course review to you all in January for your input. In March, Tim Masters on our team presented the progress on renewable portfolio standards. And today we're talking about what local action is happening comprehensively across the region. And then for the rest of the year, as the data becomes available, what we want to bring to you all is, are the actions that are taking place getting us to the outcomes that we want to see? So starting with, as I mentioned earlier, bringing to you all the 2023 greenhouse gas draft inventories for local and regional. Local jurisdictions, you will have a chance to review all of your results and discuss with staff. And then there's other data that we'll be bringing to you, like for instance, progress on green building across the region. Next slide, please. So in the survey, we actually focused the climate action, the areas that we were asking questions. We shaped them around the climate action areas of our 2030 mitigation strategy in the plan that you all adopted. And planning and equity, so it's kind of like this left column in this chart here. Planning and equity, we sort of bundled under a greenhouse gas emissions section, and we asked equity questions throughout. But essentially, we had 3 or 4 questions each on that: clean electricity, zero energy buildings, zero emission vehicles, mode shift and travel behavior, zero waste, and sequestration. And we also asked 1 question around workforce development, which is a key piece of this comprehensive climate plan that we're currently working on. Next slide, please. All the questions that we asked were, pretty much multiple choice, like the question on the left about zero energy buildings. They were really, most of them were select all the options that apply to you all. We wanted to make sure that there were options that were applicable to any community across the region, whether it was DC or you're based in Maryland or Virginia. We asked questions that related to government operations, as well as questions on how local governments were supporting community climate action. And then on the right is an example of, we had a couple data questions of, where we couldn't get data from elsewhere. And this zero emission vehicles question is asking about local government fleets and what type and how many electric vehicles do you have in your fleets. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the first set of results under greenhouse gas emissions. Every responding jurisdiction has or is developing a greenhouse gas goal and a plan. And so most of them already have a goal and a plan in place, and there are some that are still working on that. 80% of responding jurisdictions highlighted how they are using the local greenhouse gas inventories for their communities that we produce here at COG for them. And Sarah had mentioned earlier how Montgomery County has invested over $171 million in climate investments. And so that's one example of how 50% of our jurisdictions are tracking these type of investments in their communities. I think another highlight to point out here is that 80% of our jurisdictions developed their climate or energy plans with a focus on supporting disadvantaged communities. And I'll also point out how I think the results of this survey showed what we've been hearing in the meetings, that this is still an area that's challenging and that local jurisdictions are still working on various ways to equitably engage their community and to build relationships in underserved communities. Next slide, please. So for clean electricity, we asked questions about government operations, and we were asking about, what sort of solar and distributed energy resources do jurisdictions have at their local government facilities. And for solar, we saw that there's over 28,000 kilowatts of solar capacity on local government facilities. And what that equates to is about 3% of total grid connected solar in the region is operating on local government facilities. We counted 9 microgrids, and actually I made note that it's actually 10 with the police station microgrid that Sarah mentioned is opening soon. So that should say 10 there, I think. 33 geothermal systems, and 9 jurisdictions have a power purchase agreement for renewable energy. For community-wide, we saw that the majority of our jurisdictions are promoting solar co-ops, community solar, and offering and promoting financing solutions in disadvantaged communities. And then we asked a question about, do you require or incentivize solar? And I thought the responses were really interesting here, because what we learned is that everybody does this a little bit differently. There isn't really a one size fits all. But overall, the vast majority, 79% of the responding jurisdictions do have requirements or incentives for solar. Next slide, please. So the next section of questions was on zero energy buildings. And there was a big part of our 2030 plan. The modeling looked at the, some of the top ways that we need to, some of the top strategies we need to implement to encourage and get to our 2030 climate greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And one of those was through zero energy new construction, that all new construction should be net zero by 2030. And I think we found in these results some really great case studies and examples of where this is happening. We know that the vast majority of our jurisdictions have green building policies in place. We know that we are always a top region for certified green buildings across the country. But like a net zero sort of policy or programs is sort of like a next step higher than your standard green building policy. And I think that, there's what we found from these survey results is that there is room for improvement in that area. We also saw that 68% of our jurisdictions are doing energy benchmarking and reporting for their local government facilities. And then 63% of our jurisdictions for improving energy efficiency or deep energy retrofits community-wide. There's a lot happening there. 63% have financing solutions like PACE and green banks, that state and utility energy efficiency incentives are promoted, and that 63% of jurisdictions are promoting energy efficiency in affordable housing and disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. So this next area is zero emission vehicles, and 84% of our jurisdictions have evaluated their public fleets for opportunities to electrify, and 68% have a strategy to deploy EV charging stations at local government facilities. And then we also asked that question about fleets. And so the comprehensive results of this show that about 14% of local government fleets are using EV charging stations or need EV charging stations. So those are our battery electric vehicles and our plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. 3% of those are battery electric and 11% are the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. But in total, it's about 14%. And I thought it was a very interesting result to see that the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles especially have surpassed the percent of hybrid electric vehicles that we're seeing in the fleet. Community-wide, there's a lot happening. 58% have a plan to support EV charging deployment community-wide. And 47% of our jurisdictions are specifically working with multifamily housing to overcome EV charging challenges there, which is good to see because we know that's been a tough area to tackle. Next slide, please. We saw some really strong results for mode shift and travel behavior. These are very reflective of a lot of what Mike was talking about in his presentation. We asked questions about VMT reduction in local jurisdiction plans and policies, as well as how do they encourage or incentivize VMT reduction. And we saw that a lot of that was happening through supporting walking and biking within activity centers and near high capacity transit, through complete street policies and roadway design to make biking and walking safer. 74% of our jurisdictions are supporting and encouraging additional housing units within activity centers and high capacity transit, which was also, these are all pieces that were identified in our climate action plan. And then 74% are working to expand the region's trail network. And then as far as, and then also related to that is this idea of the first and last mile connectivity. And there's a lot happening in that space as well, including improving the walk and bike access to the high capacity transit stations, as Mike was talking about. And then also through promoting micromobility options like shared bike and e-bike and scooter programs. Next slide, please. The next area I'll touch on is zero waste. And again, I think these results are showing what we've been hearing in the meetings and what people have been working on regionally. We know that our jurisdictions have been working a lot on expanding organics and composting programs, and 68% were showing to have food composting drop-off sites, and 58% were shown to have residential curbside organics recycling programs. And we've seen a lot of these pilot programs and these programs expanding. So I think that's a really strong result of showing what our recycling group has been working on. And then 95% conduct waste education campaigns. And a lot of that is also coordinated through our recycling manager here as well. And then there's programs like tool sharing and fix-it fairs as well that are promoting circularity. Next slide, please. All right, so the last area from our climate plan is around sequestration. And that we found that 63% have community-wide tree canopy goals, and 58% have programs to increase tree conservation during the development process. 84% are doing tree planting to improve water quality and flood control on public lands. And I also wanted to point out that 63% have tree planting initiatives to reduce heat island in disadvantaged communities. And we also saw that there's a lot happening on private lands as well, but we also know from our meetings and from the results of this survey that private land tree preservation and planting is still a challenging area. Next slide, please. So last but not least, what I'll highlight for you all today is the workforce development results from that question that we asked. And I think it's interesting. I think it's pretty more seen or typical that state plans really address job creation and workforce development, and it's just has not been as prolific for local and regional plans. We definitely see that there are a lot of great examples happening across the region, but this is like a growing emphasis for local and regional support for workforce development. And we are having some meetings this summer to coordinate with a lot of these workforce development programs and to do an analysis and really understand, are we, where are the gaps and the needs today and moving forward to help us reach our regional climate goals. Next slide, please. So in closing, a little bit of our next steps is going to be kind of looking at these results a little closer and pulling out some case studies that we can highlight from jurisdictions in the mid-course review report. And again, if anybody hasn't responded and still wants to respond, we'll incorporate results into that. And I do want to note Carly McGovern's contribution to this work. She was our DC SEU Workforce Development Program extern. And she wasn't able to be here today to help present these results. She finished her externship with us 2 weeks ago, and at the same time finished her semester of graduate school, graduated from the DCSEU program, and was offered a position at NEEP, the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership. So we're really happy to be able to share that with you all, and that's the goal of the program, to help them grow in their career and move on to their next position. So thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions today or beyond this meeting.
Feel free to unmute if anyone has questions or comments for Maya. I'm checking the chat real quick. Yeah, there's a comment in the chat, Maya, about sort of what the degree to which the work is effective, like the work being done, is obviously being captured here. Is that maybe part of the follow-up, sort of where a lot of work is being done, what are we seeing the effectiveness, or is there a, a next step to sort of gauge where everybody's putting their time? Is it worth the effort?
Yeah, so that is part of the next steps. And as I said, we are working on wrapping up the 2023 greenhouse gas inventories. I mean, that's the ultimate, like, are we getting to the greenhouse gas reduction that we need to see? And is that on track for 2030? And then some supporting performance indicators that we're looking at is the trend in growth in green buildings since our base year, which is 2005. Trends in EV infrastructure deployment, growth in EV ownership across the region. We're going to, we look at VMT trends. We are going to be looking at a number of factors like that to sort of show, are we getting out of it what we need to get out of it? And are we on track towards 2030? So that's kind of where we are going to kind of tackle next and hopefully answer next. And I, always love to hear anybody's insights on their thoughts on, I mean, what they feel the data is telling them for this survey or for any of these performance indicators as well.
This is Jessica Rogers. I was the one who posed that sort of question, and that's not exactly what I meant. Specifically, what I mean is that, you're highlighting these data points of a certain percentage of local governments are offering programs, but it's not enough to offer programs if nobody is participating in those programs. So the DC SEU is an excellent example of this. Their budget is funded by the utilities, and they have wildly, in my opinion, having reviewed their data, pretty ineffective programs that don't utilize the budget that they're given. And they have a very hard time getting people to participate. And the costs of those programs are quite high. So when I think about cost effectiveness and effectiveness of the programming, it's not enough to say there are programs out there. Just like it's not enough to say there are EV chargers out there if no one is using them. Then we've just wasted a bunch of money and time investing in things that no one is using. And to me, it's like thinking about the most effective way to reduce emissions cost effectively and quickly. So that dynamic, I think that, and this is like my personal hobby horse, is that we get really excited about moonshots, but we don't focus on the low-hanging fruit and the practical things that we can do today. And so I would love to see the effectiveness of these programs. How much of the budget is being used? How many people are takers? Who is participating in the programs? So that's just my sort of 2 cents, having looked at some of these and spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah, no, good point. Alyssa, if you could bring up, let me see, slide 17. We did not ask questions about how many people are taking advantage of these programs that you all are offering. We survey the utilities every single year, and we were for quite a few years asking about, their sort of the utility incentive programs and how many people are taking advantage of the utility incentive programs. And we really weren't able to get clear responses from the utilities to be able to share some comprehensive results from that. But just to your point, I do want to point out that there were a variety of ways that we were seeing that local governments were tracking and reporting. And so, you have reports like Montgomery County's report that Sarah was talking about, where, there could be details like that in these reports that they're putting out there. So a lot of our jurisdictions are putting out reports related to this. An area that's been challenging is the dashboarding of this progress. And I think that's why, this isn't exactly to your question, but it is a point as to why early in this mid-course review process, you all here at CEEPC were like, please upgrade this dashboarding and tracking that you're doing to include local and regional results. And so we'll be working on sharing, those sort of outcomes for the local and regional results. But I would definitely point people to the local progress reports at this point for that like level of detail.
Well, and I just want to follow up on something that you just said. You said that you had reached out to the utilities, but had a hard time getting data from them. And I kind of find that shocking because as somebody who works for and with a lot of utilities, we generally have to report in pretty granular detail the kind of data. And so maybe it's that it's not easy to break out across counties. I could certainly believe that to be true. But I know that we do comprehensive reporting to the SCC, the PSC. So I would imagine that depending on the nature of the question you're asking, a lot of that reporting should already be out there.
Yeah, and certainly we do the survey every year, and we ask a variety of questions. And the surveys, we do get responses from all 9 utilities across the region. And we would not be able to do the greenhouse gas inventories without these surveys. We would not be able to track grid connected renewable energy if we didn't have these responses from the utilities. So we do get a lot of great data and information from the utilities. It was just that, like, the question we were asking about, like, numbers of people participating in certain programs. And you're right, we don't dig into those reports all the time and report those back to this group. So, yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And thank you, Jessica, for sort of clarifying. I didn't mean to mischaracterize the comment. I think I just scanned it quickly.
Oh, no, your interpretation was totally one possibility for interpreting it. So I appreciated your interpretation because that is certainly a way to think about it. And I think there are a lot of different ways you can cut the data. And it's important that we cut it in all the ways to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think recently in the Alexandria budget process, we dropped a program that was created just last year that was really in a transportation program that was really well intentioned by myself and a colleague, but nobody was using it, and we just decided rather than try to make it more successful, we just dropped it and moved on. And so I appreciate the point you're making about tracking not just uses but intention, not just intentions but uses. So with that, I'm going to move us along. We're a little bit behind, so hopefully Jeff can help us catch up a bit. We will have the director who will present our fiscal year 2026 work program and budget. Mr. King.
Yes, thanks. So next slide. So the Regional Environment Resource Management Program here is really geared towards supporting our efforts on the Climate and Energy Action Plan. We know you guys are really at the front line and taking action, so we're here to support you and build that local and regional capacity to meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. Next slide. And like last year, we design our work program and budget around the following program areas. We have our climate energy program with a bunch of kind of subtasks where we do policy development here at CEEPC. We manage the Built Environment Energy Advisory Committee, which is the technical committee for CEEPC. Leah Boggs manages that committee. We do a fair amount of work supporting efforts on energy infrastructure efficiency and renewables. For instance, we adopted the regional solar goal, helping to meet those goals. The electric vehicle goal, et cetera, is all done under that 1C. An area we also work on is adaptation resiliency to support that effort. We have our public advisory committee, AgPAC. We also do member support, environmental work, work program development. We have internal climate and energy projects. We also, do external projects with diesel emission reduction grants, the CFI grant, those types of things. In addition to the climate and energy work, we fund the recycling and solid waste work that John Snar manages here, the Recycling and Solid Waste Committee. And we also support the Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee through our Regional Ag and Forestry Management Program. Next slide. And all of the budget, the sources of the funds for our budget come from the Regional Environment Fund. So every year when the COG board adopts its member dues and budget, it also adopts the regional funds, and there are three: the Public Safety Fund, actually four now, Public Safety Fund, the Water Fund, Regional Environment Fund, and the Farm Program. And so a number of jurisdictions in the COG footprint contribute to the Regional Environment Fund, so that raises close to $1 million, $912,000. We also get COG member funds from the COG member dues in the amount of about $476,000. And then we have grants that support our program. Next slide. In terms of the overarching themes, we're really mainly focused on supporting your efforts to accelerate action on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to meet our 2030 climate energy goals, and to support your local climate plans and projects. So we're working to support your work on EVs, on solar, tree canopy, building efficiency, and also exploring ways to prepare the region to be more resilient to the impacts of climate change, which are here with us already. Other priority activities, options for, we're still working on the AgPac request memo to consider options for a regional climate education outreach program. And you heard from Maya about the mid-course review. Next slide. Within our climate and energy policy, I think the main effort here currently is kind of tracking progress, dashboarding. You heard that from Maya. A ton of work goes into doing the greenhouse gas inventory development. Obviously we're supporting CEEPC and bringing topics to this committee. And one other area that you heard from Robert is we analyze, track, and report federal, state, local legislation, regulations, and programs. And I heard Cindy mention she would like a briefing on the executive actions, so we can tee that up for sure. Next slide. BAC, again, is the technical committee supporting CEEPC, meets every other month, is involved with helping to prepare the regional work program budget. They also support our utility data collection analysis, the mid-course review. A lot of the work is being done there. Next slide. Again, the energy piece, alternative fuel vehicles, big focus. Regional EV deployment, solar market development, net zero buildings, financing green banks is all the type of work we do under that task. Adaptation resilience, next slide. Continuing to work with folks like Sunny Westcott, who's on the call today, and others on, understanding the climate risks that we're currently facing and what we can do about it. This is an area where we're also doing military installation resilience work. I know NVRC does that as well. Great program working with the military on resilience and readiness, coastal storm risk studies, etc. Next slide. The Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee, one of the main programs there that we run under the work program budget is the Climate Energy Leadership Awards, which is going on as we speak. So definitely a program that we support, and we're doing some work on equity, environmental justice this year, and both in collaboration with both AgPac and MWAC, the Metropolitan Washington Air Quality Committee. You heard from Maya, we still have the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Comprehensive Climate Action Plan work. That's a big grant program from EPA through District Department of Energy and Environment, developing the CCAP. That's a big push for this year. We should have that by the end of the year. And then we do the vehicle emission reduction grants, the resilience reviews, etc. Next slide. We support the COG board and members, developing this work program budget and other management administrative functions. Next slide. The Solid Waste and Recycling Committee has a number of actions. One of the more interesting one is some efforts on battery safety, given the fire risk of that, and proper disposal of batteries. So we support that. And then finally, the urban forestry work Heidi Bonifan here has taken over from Brian LeCouture, supporting the Regional Tree Canopy Subcommittee, developing a tree canopy action plan. And so we're continuing that work under this program. And that's it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Looks like I caught us up a little bit on time here. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for the presentation and developing the work plan and everything that goes into that. Are there questions or comments about the work plan and the proposal that was presented? Let me check the chat. I'll just, while people might be, the Climate Awards link is up as well, which Jeff mentioned that his staff handles. The deadline for applications is June 30th. Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, at the very beginning, you mentioned a big source of funding, grants. I was wondering if you could comment on the stability of that and how that might affect the work plan. And most importantly, whether we as a committee can do anything to advocate for the budget or the particular projects that might be in question here. All right, that was 3 questions.
Yeah, so yeah, we're definitely sensitive and aware of the changing landscape. You know, as the last 4 years, just an incredible amount of money flowing for all sorts of different climate activities, and as we've all seen with the work of Doge and others, it's quickly drying up. So to date, the grant programs that currently support us are untouched. So CFI, we're still, you know, FHWA still is at least committing to phase 1. So we have a couple years of work to get ready for hopefully phase 2, which would fund the actual installation of the charging infrastructure. We've seen, you know, in other cases where they've pulled that back. So we're cautious, you know, we're a little concerned that they may pull back the EV funding. So that's one. The climate pollution reduction grant out of EPA, you know, interestingly, I would have thought that the White House would have tried to defund that program, but there doesn't seem to be any indication that they're doing that. And so I think at least through the end of this year, we're good on that grant program. The Diesel Emission Reduction Act program is one where we've had great success over the years. We're at the very tail end of the most recent Diesel Emission Reduction Act project, repowering 2 additional switcher locomotives at Union Station to cleaner diesel. And I know Greater Washington Regional Clean Cities has started to win some DERA grants, particularly on biodiesel. And so that program I actually could see weathering the storm and continuing to fund good diesel projects. The issue in that case is the need to find private sector partners. So we'll probably dust off our attempts to figure out how to chase some DERA grants in the coming years. But the military installation one, you know, that's now we're on phase 2 of that. That project's going to wrap up at the end of the year. I don't have a good sense of whether or not DOD will continue to fund that or not. I'm hoping they will, but it's hard to say. The one ray of light that I have seen recently is, you know, they did announce a new EPA regional administrator. I forget her name, but she's a lady from Pennsylvania, farming background. And one of the first things that I saw coming out of EPA Region 3 was an announcement of a grant funding program for brownfields. And so, you know, it's possible we would see opportunities to pivot and shift to some other environmental focus areas. I don't know, you know, if they want to give out money to clean up brownfields instead of give out money to do climate plans, we could probably chase some brownfields money, but you know, that's a unwritten story. We're still kind of tracking everything, but yeah, we're fairly concerned. One of the things that we're doing internally here, thinking ahead to fiscal year 27, is when I look at the budget, I'm trying to make sure staff are completely covered with the member dues and the Regional Environment Fund, and not rely on grants to fund the staff time. And so that's one step we're taking, kind of looking ahead to fiscal year 27.
And for fiscal 26 in this budget, you're covered with that
Yeah, we're
baseline.
covered. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
If there's other questions, or I'd entertain a motion to adopt the FY26 work program and budget. I see a motion from Cindy. And is there a second to approve and adopt the work program and budget?
This is Beth Groth. I second it.
Thank you, Beth. All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, you can put up your hand emojis or unmute and say aye.
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 Thank you. I'm seeing hands on a few screens. Okay. Oh, great. Thank you, Janie, MC, Shannon, Alan, John. Thank you. Okay, hands down. Any objections or no's? I'm scanning. I see Shannon. Oh, took it back down. We're going to think that was a late yes. Okay. So the motion carries. We've approved the FY26 work program and budget. We've now reached, we're a minute shy of our meeting end, but I do want to give, we shared written updates in advance. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he was just not on mute.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we shared written updates in advance. If you've had and those are also on the committee's website. But this would be the time for any committee chairs or members to provide updates, and for staff to provide us updates. I will provide one quick member update, which I wanted to share, which is that Alexandria just became the first in the Commonwealth to ban gas leaf blowers. We did that last Saturday. It's an 18-month phase-in process, but I want to thank this body and our neighbors in Montgomery County and DC who sort of started that ball rolling and gave us a metric to follow. And so thank you everybody who was a part of that, and to our staff who are here who helped put that together. With that, I'm going to ask people who have updates to unmute and just start the ball game. I saw Bill turn his camera on. So Bill, I'm going to come to you first if you have an update.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bill Washburn. I'm the chair for ACPAC for 2025, and I represent DC. We held our meeting, we held our bi-monthly meeting last week on April the 19th. And at that meeting, we hosted our final community listening session on the new EJ Toolkit. Equitable Partners presented preliminary feedback received from engagement with community members and organizations across the region. There were some areas of concern that were brought out in the presentation and discussion, including energy costs, reliability issues, data center impacts. This is, I guess, just judging from the discussion in today's meeting, those impacts from major data centers, particularly the hyperscale ones, are becoming serious areas of concern on the community side, as well as with regards to local governments themselves. And this is with respect to air quality, also with regards to heating events and flooding. These are other issues that were discussed. Equinevall is going to continue their community outreach through June, and they announced that they expect to finalize their report by the end of June. We also received an update from ICF Consulting on the CPRG Comprehensive Climate Action Plan requirements and draft details of the data center, center results, including greenhouse gas inventory and projections. AgPac also launched the annual Climate and Energy Leadership Awards program, which Jeff mentioned earlier, and we launched it on Earth Day. This is the 12th year of the program, and we are looking to make 5 awards in the following areas. We're looking to make 2 awards to governments, 1 for small jurisdictions under 90,000 population, and 1 for large jurisdictions with populations over 90,000. We are also looking to make 2 awards in the non-government organization category, 1 for nonprofits and 1 to for-profit organization. And finally, we're looking to make 1 award to institution of educational institution, which would include eligible educational institutions would be K-12, public, private, or higher education. All applications are due by the 30th of June. And if you have any questions regarding that program, please contact Leah Boggs on COG staff. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 21. And with that, that concludes my report. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or direct them to Leah, as the case may be.
Thank you, Bill, for that report and chairing the committee. We look forward to hearing about the outcome of the awards. Are there any other committee chairs or local jurisdictional updates? Feel free to unmute and jump in.
Yes, good morning. I'm Maddie Bizerto, Director of Business Operations for the City of Bowie, and I am the co-vice chair for the BIAC. We had a meeting on April the 17th. We hosted a panel discussion on workforce development called Building a Climate Ready Workforce in the Washington region. The panelists included representatives from the ICF Consulting, from DMV Emerald Cities Collaborative, Prince George's Community College, and Montgomery County Community College. As part of the EPA CPRG Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, the CEEPC, grant program requirements, COG is required to conduct an analysis of anticipated workforce shortages that could prevent achieving the goals of the CCAP. And so we identified some potential solutions and partners. So at the meeting, we discussed, the discussion underscored the importance of regional coordination, early education pathways, and scalable models for workforce equity. And it also laid some groundwork for more focused outreach and analysis in the CCAP development process, and highlighted practices for building a climate-ready workforce across the Washington region. The discussion was really great, and we've got a lot of insight from our participants. And then finally, BIAC's next meeting is June 12th. I was trying to be as brief and as quick as possible. So if you have any other questions, just please reach out to me or to Leah. Thank you.
Thank you, Matty, and for the update. The panel sounds great. Anyone else? And staff, feel free. I know y'all have updates as well. Okay, I'm not hearing or seeing anything, and hopefully the live stream didn't end, or I didn't get kicked out. Let me just ask Jeff or Maya, any other updates y'all need to provide, or any other information before we wrap the meeting up? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. It was a great meeting, great presentations, and good feedback in the chat. Our next virtual meeting is July 23rd at 10 a.m. And without any objection, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.